Chapter 1. When the earthquake hit, another girl and I were both trapped under the rubble. This woman has a steel rod through her chest. We need to operate immediately. Just as the rescuers were heading toward me, my husband Diego rushed out. Save her first. She's pregnant. Following his gaze, I saw the desperate way he was staring at the other girl. But what he didn't know was, I was pregnant too. At that moment, the doctor who was trying to stop my bleeding shouted, "Her bleeding won't stop. I suspect she may have a clotting disorder." I nodded with all the strength I had left, but in response to my pleading eyes, Diego spoke slowly and firmly, "I'm her husband. If anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility." Hearing Diego's words, the rescue workers hesitated for a moment, then ultimately turned away from me. After all, with Diego taking responsibility as a family member, it didn't matter who they saved first. Lying there, bleeding out, I went numb, not just from the blood loss, but from Diego's words. The nearby doctor and nurse couldn't help muttering in disbelief. People these days are just too much. His wife's clearly in worse shape, and he's still prioritizing another woman. And that woman barely has a scratch, just a few scrapes. Yet she's pushing her way into the rescue queue with critically injured patients. Choosing a husband wisely is really important. Her chest was pierced by a steel rod, and he still couldn't care less. Their voices were painfully clear in my ears. I turned my head and saw Diego gently cradling the girl, Elise, in his arms. His face was full of worry, tenderness, and guilt. That expression, I'd never seen it once in all 7 years of our marriage. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was that his heart was already completely occupied by Elise. There was no room left for me, his wife. My body grew colder, and I realized that if this went on, I might not even be able to save the baby. I forced myself to take a breath and grab the nurse's hand, trembling as I spoke. "Please, could you save me first? I'm pregnant too." Just then, Diego walked over with Elise in his arms. When he heard me, his face twisted in disgust. "Seriously? Even now you're trying to gain my sympathy with some sob story? Disgusting. I said Eli is pregnant, and now you have to make something up to compete with her? Doctor, ignore her. She's perfectly fine. Eli's injured. She needs a full medical checkup." At that moment, I had no strength left to fight back. My grip on the nurse's hand slowly slipped away. Seeing this, the nurse cried out, "She's not going to make it like this." Diego didn't even glance at me, his voice furious. "I already said, I'm her husband. If anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility. She's just faking it. She won't die. You need to examine Eli right away. If anything happens to her, which one of you is going to take the blame?" With Diego insisting, the doctor who had been treating me had no choice but to stop and turn to examine Elise instead. Only the same nurse stayed by my side, still gripping my hand tightly. Her voice trembled. "Hang in there. We're going to save you. I promise." I tried to keep my eyes open, willing myself not to lose consciousness, but my mind began to blur, and I could feel the warm blood steadily draining from my body. Tears rolled down the sides of my face. As I slipped into unconsciousness, only one thought remained. Why does it hurt this much? After 7 years of marriage, in a life or death moment, he chose another woman without hesitation. In my haze, I heard someone calling my name. When I opened my eyes again, I was already in the emergency room. It was that same young nurse. Her eyes were red. Her voice caught as she hesitated to speak. "Can you contact any other family members? We need a signature for the anesthesia. We tried calling your husband several times, but he wouldn't answer." My heart ached. Diego was probably busy taking care of Elise right now. He wouldn't have time to pick up the phone. "I'll do it myself." I forced out the words, using every ounce of strength to sign my name with a trembling hand. Just before I passed out from the pain, I heard the nurses chatting in the ER. "Marrying someone really depends on luck." That other pregnant woman who was just brought in, Elise. I think her husband treats her like a treasure. But look at this one, on the brink of death. And they can't even find her next of kin. Chapter 2. The young nurse's voice was stiff, afraid I'd be hurt by what they said, and quickly interrupted. "That's enough." But in truth, I wasn't sad at all. I even felt like laughing a little. If those people only knew that the good husband they were talking about had abandoned his wife and child to fawn over another woman, what would they think then? But none of that mattered now. All I wanted was to keep my baby safe. The anesthesia began to flood my body, and just before I lost consciousness, I looked at the nurse with pleading eyes. The baby? I had only managed to say those 2 words before slipping into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes again, the smell of disinfectant in the hospital room hit me straight in the nose. The anesthesia hadn't worn off completely. I slowly lifted my hand and instinctively touched my lower belly. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" "Don't worry, the baby's safe." The young nurse came in through the door when she saw I'd woken up. Her eyes lit up with joy, nearly overflowing, while tucking in my blanket. She began to grumble. "Your husband treated you like that. And even in a life-or-death moment, you were still thinking about his child. Was it worth it?" I held back the pain, tugged at the corner of my lips, and forced a strained smile. "At the very least, the baby is innocent, right?" The nurse paused for a moment, then nodded, her gaze toward me full of sympathy and pity. She didn't say more, only reminded me to rest well before turning and leaving the room. I lay in bed, physically and mentally exhausted, just about to drift off again, but then I heard voices from the next room. "Diego, it hurts so much. Be good." "Eli, I'm here." It was Diego and Elise. My lashes trembled. I lowered my gaze. "Diego, the baby, don't worry. With me here, the baby will be fine." Diego's voice was filled with a gentleness and patience I had never heard before. "Shouldn't you check on her? She looked pretty badly hurt." The moment I was mentioned, Diego's tone changed into one of clear disgust. "Eli, why are you even worrying about her? You're just too kind." "Back then, in that situation, she deliberately lied to steal your medical resources. A woman that vicious, if she dies, she deserves it." My mind went completely blank, but tears started pouring from my eyes uncontrollably. More than the pain from the steel rod through my chest, it was Diego's words that cut me open like 1,000 blades. I couldn't bear to listen anymore and forcibly closed my eyes. Once my condition stabilized, I was transferred to a regular ward and called the housekeeper to come take care of me. The phone rang for a long time, but no one picked up. Just as I hung up, the housekeeper walked in carrying a lunchbox. The moment our eyes met, I saw the embarrassment and surprise in her gaze, like she had walked into the wrong room and didn't know how to retreat. "Isolde, why didn't you answer the phone?" I tossed my phone aside and asked curiously. She instinctively hid the lunchbox behind her back and stammered. I was sent by the mister." I let out a soft snort, though I'd already expected as much in my heart. When the earthquake hit, if Diego could tell the doctors to save Elise first, then of course, after the surgery, he would make sure the housekeeper looked after her first too. Thinking that, I cleared my throat and gave Isolde a small smile. "Well, since you're here, why don't you wheel me around for a bit?" Isolde looked reluctant but didn't dare say a word. She had no choice but to push me out of the room in a wheelchair. In the end, I stopped right in front of Elisa's hospital room. Chapter 3. The girl lying in the hospital bed was young and beautiful. Her skin was fair and glowing, with soft willow-shaped brows above a pair of clear, pure eyes. The moment she saw me, she didn't look surprised at all. Instead, she spoke like the mistress of the room. "Isolde, who is she?" I said nothing, simply gazing at her in silence. Isolde scratched her head awkwardly, then finally spoke after a long pause. "She's Diego's wife." At that, Elise immediately changed into a delicate, pitiful expression, whispering softly, "So you're Mrs. Moo." Her eyes swept up and down my body, and she deliberately emphasized the word Mrs. "Mrs. Moo, please don't blame Diego. It's all my fault. If I hadn't been injured and pregnant, Diego wouldn't have left you to stay with me." Listening to Elisa's deliberately pitiful performance, I let out a cold laugh. Looks like Diego doesn't have the best taste either. If he likes you that much, he can have you. A man who's already tainted isn't worth keeping. I turned around to leave, but in the next second, my wheelchair was suddenly shoved hard from behind. Bang! It crashed into the bedside cabinet. Caught completely off guard, I fell to the ground. A searing pain shot through my body, Isolde gasping in shock. She rushed to help me up from the floor. Elise spoke up with an apologetic face. "Mrs. Moo, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." I saw you were upset and got scared you'd misunderstand things between me and Diego. I just panicked and tried to stop you. I clearly felt a warm sensation between my legs. Instinctively, I looked down, my pant legs were already soaked in blood. Ah, Mrs. Moo, you're bleeding. Doctor, someone, help. She's bleeding. Elise screamed in panic, but I caught a fleeting glint of triumph in her eyes. I was rushed into the operating room once again, but this time, luck was not on my side. My baby was gone. When I regained consciousness, Diego was sitting beside my bed, his face grim. I thought he had already heard about the baby, but instead, the first words out of his mouth were accusations. You shouldn't have gone to see Eli. What did you just say? My mind felt like it was being pounded by a club wrapped in cotton. I stared at him in disbelief as a chill spread through my body. What's with that face? So what if you fell? Sure, you ended up in surgery. But look, you're still alive and well, aren't you? If you had just stayed in your room and not gone picking a fight with Eli, would any of this have happened? I frowned, beginning to pick up on the key point. It seemed Diego didn't know about the baby. Chances were Elise and the housekeeper had secretly covered it up. That was fine. He didn't deserve to know the baby ever existed. Then Diego took a pair of earrings from his pocket, cleared his throat, and spoke slowly. This is for you. My gaze fell on the earrings. They were my favorite pair, the ones I'd begged Diego to buy for me in the past. But he'd always said married women should be proper and not waste time on appearances. What's this supposed to mean? I knew Diego too well. If he was backing down, it was never out of guilt, much less because he wanted to apologize on Elise's behalf. The earthquake has caused quite a stir lately. And? So, the morning after tomorrow, a group of reporters will come to the hospital for an interview. After all, you have a clotting disorder, and surviving such a severe injury is practically a miracle. I'd like you to give that interview opportunity to Eli. Let her take your place and pretend to be my wife. Chapter 4. I was utterly disgusted by how absurd and shameless Diego's words were. I abruptly asked him, and how exactly do you give away something like that? Diego glanced at me and continued, I've already pulled some strings and switched the medical records. No one will find out. At those words, I fell silent. Diego mistook my silence for reluctance and softened his tone. I know you've always wanted a child. Once you recover, we'll have one. You know my company is about to go public. We really need the buzz from this story. And Eli is a public figure. With her involved, the attention will be even greater. If we pull off this publicity move, it'll benefit us in every way. I let out a cold laugh. Sure enough, even now, Diego was still only thinking about Elise and himself. He never cared about me, not once. Fine. I didn't hesitate, I nodded. Seeing this, he visibly relaxed and held my hand with a look of deep affection. I knew you'd understand. We're husband and wife when I succeed. You succeed. All right. Get some rest. I'll come see you later. But the joke was, Diego never came, not even once before the scheduled interview 2 days later. After asking around, I learned the interview was being held in the hospital's conference hall. I checked the time and dragged my not yet healed body over there. By the time I arrived, the place was already packed with reporters. Through the crowd, I immediately spotted Diego and Elise. Diego was pushing Elisa's wheelchair with a look of tender concern. Elise had deliberately dressed to appear seriously injured. Hand in hand, the two looked deeply in love, like a perfect, well-matched couple. Just then, a reporter asked Elise a question. Miss Elise, having survived this disaster, who do you want to thank the most? Elise gave a weak smile. I want to thank the doctors who saved me. They pulled my baby and me back from the brink of death. I also want to thank my partner, whose unwavering love and support gave me the strength to hold on. As soon as she finished speaking, a chorus of admiration filled the room. That's so touching. Your love will surely grow stronger after such an ordeal. Exactly. So many families were torn apart in the quake. It's incredible that your little family of 3 survived. You're bound to have a bright future. Then another reporter spoke up. Mr. Diego, you're not only a great CEO, but also a loving husband, a role model for men. Do you have anything to say to your fellow gentlemen? Diego looked at the microphone held out to him, then bent down intentionally, gazing at Elise with eyes full of affection. He cleared his throat and was just about to speak when, I pushed through the crowd with what I had prepared long in advance, striding straight toward Diego. Smack! In the next second, a crisp, resounding slap landed on his face. The force of it knocked him off balance. He nearly fell to the ground. The entire room erupted in shock, and hundreds of cameras immediately turned to point at me. Cecilia, you. I sneered and pointed at the panicked Elise in the wheelchair, my voice ice cold. She's your wife? Then what am I? Have you ever asked our child? Before Diego could react, I yanked off the black cloth draped across my chest. A square child-sized urn was suddenly revealed to the room. Chapter 5. Diego was visibly startled, while Elise let out a scream and hid behind him. Cecilia, what the hell are you doing? I gave a cold snort and stepped closer, forcing him to retreat. Did you ever ask our child how he felt about you being with this murderer? What child? Cecilia, have you lost your mind? Elise peeked out from behind Diego, whispering softly, yeah, how could you just accuse people like that with no proof? The reporters all turned their microphones toward me. Ma'am, could you please explain about the child? And what exactly is your relationship with Diego? I had long known Elise would try to keep playing innocent, so I came prepared. Facing the cameras, I pulled a medical report from my pocket, proof of pregnancy, along with my marriage certificate. Diego and I are legally married. Of course the child was ours. Before the cameras could get a clear shot, Diego snatched the report out of my hands. You were pregnant? He stared at me, stunned. Yes, I was. At the earthquake site, when you abandoned me to save Elise, I was already pregnant. I spoke through clenched teeth, each word deliberate and sharp. And the woman you risked everything to save killed our child with her own hands. At those words, the reporters turned on Elise. Miss Elise, is what she said true? So Diego is already married. Doesn't that make you the other woman, interfering in someone else's marriage? Elise's eyes reddened, her voice trembling. No, I didn't. It wasn't me. Really, it wasn't. She grabbed Diego's sleeve for support, eyes brimming with tears. Diego frowned deeply, then after a moment's hesitation, still pulled her into his arms. Enough. Don't throw around accusations without proof. I never imagined that even after learning I'd been pregnant, Diego would still take Elise's side. Miss Moo, you can't just slap labels on people without evidence. Exactly. Miss Moo, don't make baseless claims. The reporters began murmuring among themselves. Who says there's no evidence? Amid the chaos, a familiar voice rang out from behind me. I turned to look. It was the young nurse who had cared for me so many times in the hospital. She walked up in front of the cameras and pulled out her phone. A video began playing. It was surveillance footage. Then it hit me. That day I went to Elisa's room. The door had been left open, and the hospital corridor was under surveillance. No, that's not what happened. Elise screamed like a madwoman and lunged at the nurse, trying to snatch the phone from her hands, but the nurse shoved her down without hesitation. To think someone who built her online persona on rescuing stray animals could be so vicious and cruel in private. Yeah, seriously, you never really know someone's true nature. For all we know, those poor animals she filmed might have suffered horrible abuse once the cameras stopped rolling. One reporter after another began condemning Elise's actions. Some even lost control and started shouting in anger. Wrecking someone's home, killing their baby, women like her will get what's coming. Karma is real. You're going to hell. Although Diego was clearly losing face, he still tried to defend Elise. This must be a misunderstanding. Eli isn't that kind of person. The young nurse sneered coldly and snapped back. Birds of a feather flock together. You're a scumbag. You'll get struck by lightning sooner or later. Then she paused and cleared her throat. I was on rescue duty the day the earthquake happened. It was this man. He knew full well that his wife had a clotting disorder, and he still gave up her chance at treatment to save that homewrecker. Diego's face changed dramatically, no longer caring about appearances. He lunged forward, ready to strike. Shut the fuck up. Before I could even step in to stop him, several reporters, outraged by what they just heard, had already surrounded him. You got something to say? Say it! Why are you trying to get violent now? This guy might have anger issues. Diego glared at me with a storm brewing in his eyes. Cecilia, are you just going to stand there? Does seeing me like this make you happy? I nodded and gave him a slight smile. A real man owns up to what he's done. You fucking bitch. This is all your fault, everything's ruined now. If you don't clear this up today, I'm divorcing your ass. Diego, have some shame, will you? You're still trying to lie your way out of this? Don't forget, the whole interview today is being broadcast live. That was the final blow. Diego completely lost it. He screamed and tried to charge at me, but the reporters were packed in too tightly, he couldn't get near me. Diego, what do you have to say about the evidence Miss Mu just presented? Yes. Please explain yourself to all of us. Diego and Elise were now completely trapped by the media crowd. Everyone there was lashing out at the two of them. Diego's fake, righteous facade had been utterly torn apart. Satisfied, I curled my lips into a faint smile and walked away from the scene with the nurse by my side. Chapter 6. That live stream quickly shot to the top of the trending searches. Both Diego and Elisa's personal profiles were instantly flooded. Countless users left angry comments beneath their posts. One person wrote, absolutely shameless. Your wife was pregnant and had a blood clotting disorder. Yet you chose to save your mistress. And honestly, she's not even prettier than your wife. Someone replied to that, when a man wants to cheat, even crap outside smells like roses. Lady, divorce him fast, may you stay strong and beautiful on your own. Diego had always been a bit of a male chauvinist. He couldn't stand being publicly humiliated. He personally jumped into the comment sections, replying to any noticeable insult with vicious retorts. It looked just like an old lady arguing in a market. CEO. Huh? I can only imagine how terrible his company must be with that level of IQ. And he still dreams of going public? If his company actually goes public, I'll do a handstand and eat shit. The farce lasted several days. Thankfully, the internet moves fast, and new scandals replace the old quickly. Eventually, the buzz died down. What I didn't expect was that Diego would actually come looking for me. After that dramatic press conference, I had already moved out of that so-called home. Due to my physical condition, I wasn't working for the time being, so I was living in a friend's unused apartment. I didn't know what Diego had said to my friend, but somehow, he got my address. The moment I opened the door, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. I remembered the earthquake, how he had rushed to save Elise, how he used to make so many promises to me. I once thought we'd grow old together. I never imagined things would end like this. There we stood, facing each other like sworn enemies. He impatiently handed me a bank card. There's $3 million in here. Think of it as compensation for the baby. You've made your scene. I've paid the price. Isn't that enough? He actually thought $3 million could buy back a child. I shot back sarcastically. So in your eyes, a child comes with a price tag? Then how much is Elisa's baby worth? His face darkened. Are you threatening me? If you dare lay a finger on Eli, don't blame me for getting nasty. And another thing, I need you to publicly clarify that everything that happened before was just you being emotional and making things up. My company's about to go public. If this scandal continues, I could lose my job, and if the company sues, I'll owe millions. Are you trying to ruin me? Classic toxic masculinity. Even now, he thought a few words would make me forgive him. Delusional. If you won't agree, we'll divorce. Let's see what kind of man wants you after. You're just used goods. Ha! How had I never seen this side of Diego before? Not only was he disloyal, he had no respect for women, using terms like used goods or damaged goods to insult them. I let out a bitter laugh. Divorce? I'd love that. Diego looked at me in disbelief. What did you just say? You want to divorce me? I nodded calmly. Who do you think you are to divorce me? You're so average, it's a blessing you even got to marry me in the first place. If anyone's going to file for divorce, it should be me. How dare you bring it up? All those years of marriage, he always called me ordinary. Every time we went out and he saw someone else's attractive girlfriend, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Friends would joke, "Careful, or your wife will make you kneel on a washboard when you get home." He'd laugh loudly, then blame her, not me. She's built like a linebacker and has bad skin. Come on, men love beauty. How can that be my fault? If I ever got upset, he'd say I was petty. I was just joking. If you're going to get mad over that, I don't know what to say. In social settings, you need to take a joke. That's how you build connections. I was the clown for so many years. Later, I happened to see him bringing Elise to a business event, her entire body leaning into his arms. He bent down, gently checking if she'd had too much to drink. Full of tenderness and affection, one of his friends nudged him when he saw me arriving. Diego smiled like it was no big deal. "It's fine. Our Miss Moo is super understanding. So understanding, in fact, that I could tolerate him loving another woman in broad daylight. I thought my patience would one day make him return to me. And now? I've lost my baby. He's lost his future. This so-called true love he found after marriage nearly destroyed lives. But he's still delusional, still trying to shove all the blame onto me." Chapter 7. He was threatening me, but I was fully determined to get a divorce. He avoided me, refusing to negotiate, so I filed a lawsuit and took him to court. A few days before the hearing, Diego, who had been hiding from me all this time, finally showed up again. When he saw me, he froze for a moment. "You've changed a lot." He said it with genuine surprise. I nodded and smiled lightly. "Now that I don't have to sit around waiting for your messages anymore, I can do whatever I want." Of course I've changed. There was a giant mirror in the lobby on the first floor of the apartment. I glanced at my reflection, slim, perfectly proportioned. My naturally pale skin stood out even more in the black dress I was wearing, giving me an elegant and striking presence. I looked nothing like I used to. Diego, by contrast, looked slightly worn down. I had seen the screenshots a friend had sent me from Elisa's recent posts. After my public confrontation at the press conference, Diego became the target of public outrage. Elise didn't stand by him. Instead, she pressured him to divorce me and marry her immediately. She even threatened him openly. "You're not still thinking about going back to her, are you? Don't forget, I've got plenty of dirt on you." Turns out, in order to please Elise, Diego had bought her gift after gift until he ran out of money. Eventually, he resorted to taking kickbacks and falsifying accounts to embezzle company funds. Elise, ever calculating, saved records of his chats and voice messages. Diego didn't want to stay under her thumb forever. "Can't you cut me some slack? Right now isn't the time to get married. Do you want me to lose everything?" But Elise didn't care. Every few days, she'd pick a fight. She even caused scenes at his company, shouting in the lobby, "Diego, you heartless bastard. I'm pregnant. How can you abandon me?" But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I was focused on getting divorced. I'd never look back. I didn't bother with small talk. I got straight to the point. "Thanks for the compliment, but let's talk about the divorce. These past years of marriage, I didn't earn as much as you did, but I contributed a lot to the household. I hope you'll take that into consideration. I'm not greedy. I just want what I rightfully deserve." At the mention of divorce, Diego fell silent. After a long pause, he finally looked up at me. "Do you really have to go through with this? I thought after all this time, your anger would have subsided. I loved you, otherwise I wouldn't have married you. Haven't I treated you well all these years?" I opened my phone and pulled up Elisa's social media page. There were countless posts subtly flaunting their relationship. I pointed at them one by one. "That's your hand, right? On my birthday, you said you were on a business trip, but you were actually on a mountaintop watching a meteor shower with Elise. I stayed up all night because I couldn't reach you. And this necklace, wasn't it for a client? You said it had to be expensive. To help you, I gave you the emerald necklace my grandmother left me after our family went bankrupt. It was the most valuable thing I had. I handed it over without hesitation, and you gave it to Elise. They even went to Iceland together to see the Northern Lights. That had been my dream ever since I was young, to see them with him. But every time, Diego insisted they were just friends, that nothing physical had ever happened. And now, here he was, begging me not to divorce him, saying he loved me, saying Elise had tricked him, claiming it was all her seduction. Chapter 8. Diego refused to negotiate. "If you really want a divorce, then go ahead and sue me. Either way, I'll never agree to it." He had always cared so much about saving face. But from that day on, he started showing up at my building every single day. On the first day, he got up at 5 in the morning, drove across the city in the dead of night, and queued for 2 hours to buy my favorite little cakes. On the second day, He went out to a friend's flower farm in the suburbs late at night and picked a bouquet of blooming roses for me with his own hands. On the third day, he brought out the emerald necklace my grandmother had left me, claiming he had gotten it back from Elise at a steep price. On the fourth day, I instructed security not to let him upstairs and refused to accept anything he tried to send. After that, he disappeared for a while. I later heard from a friend that, after the company's IPO was delayed, Diego was summoned by headquarters. The higher-ups slammed documents in his face, yelling, "If you can do the job, do it. If not, get out." It was said that when he walked out, he had a bruise on his forehead. Originally, they'd promised he'd be made CEO of the China region once the company went public, but with the scandal he caused, he lost his chance at promotion. Worse still, he probably wouldn't be trusted or used for anything important for years to come. He had to spend a fortune smoothing things over. Since the IPO was postponed indefinitely, the money he had personally invested couldn't be recovered anytime soon either. He was barely scraping by, and at his lowest point, Elise broke up with him. Diego couldn't accept it. "I gave up my wife and child for you, and now you're dumping me?" Elise said coldly, without the slightest mercy, "Everything you did willingly. What does that have to do with me? You told me if I followed you, life would be good, but now you're barely staying afloat. Why would I stick around?" When I met Diego one last time to discuss the division of assets, I asked him to confirm those rumors. Diego looked a bit ashamed. "There's not much to say. I just misjudged someone. Cecilia, can we start over?" Wasn't my answer obvious enough? I countered. The little cakes he brought, I gave them to the cleaning lady in the building. The flowers were signed for by a friend, since I'm allergic to pollen. As for the necklace, I kept it, but only because it had been mine to begin with. I smiled. "Diego, you know what the most expensive thing in the world is? Regret, because you can't buy it. I don't know what kind of person Elise really is, but I do know you're not a good one either, so I hope you'll just agree to the divorce. Let's part ways peacefully, no need to drag this through court." Who was it that said love, in the end, turns the plaintiff and defendant into enemies? How absurd. Maybe my words hit his ego too hard. Diego finally agreed to sign, and we split the assets 50-50ths. I don't want it. I told him, "You earned more than I did, you should take a bigger share. If I ever need money, I'm still young, I can earn it with my own two hands." He said with guilt, "Take what's rightfully yours. Don't be polite." I didn't want to have anything more to do with him, but since he insisted so firmly, I agreed. Chapter 9. Later, I heard from a mutual friend of Diego and mine. Elise had gotten an abortion and completely cut ties with Diego. Fortunately, the company Diego worked for managed to recover after some maneuvering and eventually went public successfully. Diego himself was promoted to CEO of the China division. Apparently, Elise tried to come crawling back, relentlessly pursuing him, but Diego avoided her completely. Elise ended up collapsed on the rooftop of Diego's company building, threatening him. "I was with you all these years, and now you think you can just walk away with a simple let's part on good terms? You think I'm like your ex-wife? I'm not some weak, easy-to-bully woman. If Diego doesn't come up here to see me, I'll jump off this rooftop. Let's see how your stock price plummets. If I can't have peace, no one else should either." The rich man Elise had been with recently turned out to be a kept man, completely dependent on his wife. When the wife found out, she beat Elise badly and warned her, if she ever dared contact her husband again, she'd make Elise's life hell. Elise had run out of options. She thought Diego was still as obsessed with her as ever, that all she had to do was come back and he'd forgive and embrace her again. But she hadn't expected that after the divorce, Diego would throw himself into his career and completely ignore her. She couldn't handle the blow, which is why she caused such a rooftop scene. Under pressure from all sides, Diego finally went up to meet her. "You've already ruined me enough. What more do you want?" "I want to marry you. You promised me you would. Back when my life hit rock bottom, you aborted our child and ran off with someone else. Now that I'm successful, you come crawling back? I can't move past that. Let me go. Let's part ways peacefully." Diego tried hard to reason with her. He slowly approached, intending to pull her down from the ledge. Just end this farce. But after being beaten badly not long ago, Elise had become mentally unstable, dangerously unstable. The moment she heard Diego's words, she snapped and made up her mind to die with him. Just as Diego grabbed her hand, she pulled him with her. The two of them fell to their deaths on the spot. Word was, their bodies were in terrible condition. No one even showed up to claim them. The local police called me, asking about my relationship to Diego, since he had died. Did I want to handle the arrangements? At the time, I was already at the airport, ticket to Switzerland in hand. He's my ex-husband, only my ex-husband. The young officer on the other end chuckled awkwardly. All right then, never mind.